Good afternoon and welcome to Agriculture 2020 here on Dream Agritech Consultancy Services Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, Dream Agritech Services. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat na nanonood at sumusuporta sa Dream Agri Media at sa Dream Agritech. Ngayong hapon po ay continuation ng discussion natin last week regarding sa weather index-based insurance. And today we have our special speaker, our guest speaker, Dr. Aileen Lapitan. So abangan nyo po yan. We will be starting the stream very soon. Pero bago yon, nais po muna naming ipahatid sa inyo na ang Dream Agritech ay meron pong serbisyo na hinahatid para po sa mga nais din mag-conduct ng sarili nilang mga agricultural webinar. At ito ang aming isa sa mga key services, agriculture webinar hosting. So, meron pong 5 components ito. Hassle-free hosting po. At any mobile device na may web browser at may selfie camera ay pwede na mag-stream. Customize din ang graphics at ang overlay. Sabay natin pwedeng i-stream ito sa YouTube at Facebook. At pwede tayo mag-setup ng mga feedback mechanism tulad ng surveys, Google Forms, survey sa website, at kung ano-ano pa para malaman nyo ang feedback ng inyong audience. Punta na sa dreamagritech.com at mag-iwan ng mensahe doon, or you can also message us at agrimedia@dreamagritech.com. Para naman po sa mga budding agripreneurs, it's your time to shine. Be a paskilan featurepreneur. So kung ikaw ay isang entrepreneur na nag-ooperate sa agricultural space, kung meron kang goods or services, kunwari ikaw ay nagbebenta ng liquid fertilizer, or kung ikaw naman ay nag-offer ng stud services, mowing, basta related sa agriculture, pwede kayong mag-advertise dito sa Paskilan. Kung kayo rin ay may mga binibentang agricultural products tulad ng specialty coffee, cacao, buko juice, baka meron kayong buko juice dyan na binibenta, pwede po yan sa Paskilan. If you can provide us a 3 to 5 sentence description of your company, which we will be read during the Paskilan pre-show, ito yon. So, please do provide us with the relevant links of your Facebook account, Twitter, or your website. Also with your company logo and photos along with your contact information. Of course, kung willing kayo mag-giveaway ng samples at discounts para sa ating mga manonood, malaking plus yon para sa Paskilan Featurepreneur. So, please do not hesitate. Please punta na kayo sa dreamagritech.com/paskilan-sign-up. Once again, dreamagritech.com/paskilan-sign-up para po mag-register. At meron tayong pa-contest. Ating kasamahan na si Bards Interno. Wohoy kahoy! What would you think a Share Your Thoughts contest? So ang mechanics nito, subscribe na kayo sa Bards Interno YouTube channel at sa paki-like na rin ang Bards Interno Facebook page. Paki-like din ang Gems Project Basil na Facebook page. At i-share ang post, mag-share ng post sa Facebook na may sagot sa tanong na, dahil sa nangyaring pandemic ngayon, ano kaya ang kinabukasan ng agrikultura sa Pilipinas? Minimum ng 3 sentences at huwag kalimutan itag si Bards at si Gem. Ang promo na ito ay tumatakbo mula July 6 hanggang July 20. At ang mga mananalo ay magkakamit ng merong 6 winners ng isang bote ng natural liquid fertilizer with 3 seed packs. At meron ding 1 winner ng 2 bottles of natural liquid fertilizer with 4 seed packs. At meron na ring abaka woven cloth na mask. Wow! Okay yun. Makasaling natin. So guys, huwag na kayo mag-atubili. Sali na kayo. Hatid ito sa atin ng mga kaibigan natin na si Bards at si Gem. And we will start the stream in 3 minutes. Pakiabangan na lang guys. Please paki-like ang aming mga page, Dream Agritech at Dream Agrimedia on Facebook. And please subscribe sa aming YouTube channel. Paki-click na rin yung notification bell. Pati na rin sa Facebook, meron din yan. Notify, live notifications para malaman nyo kapag meron kaming webinar o yung aming palabas sa Wednesday na Agri ka ba. So please, like, share, and subscribe. In 2 minutes and 30 seconds, we will begin the stream with Dr. Aileen Lapitan on our continuation on the discussion on WIBI, Weather Index-Based Insurance. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Hello everybody and welcome to Agriculture 2020, New Perspectives in Agriculture, now on at 5:30 p.m. I am Dax Olfindo of Dream Agritech, and with me is my colleague, Jim Cano. Jim? Hello bro.
Hello.
Ayun, good afternoon. Okay naman ba yung audio?
Good afternoon.
May feedback ba or ano?
Yeah. I can hear myself.
Alright, hang on. Let me fix it. Okay. Ayan, okay na ba?
Yeah, better.
Alright.
Nice.
Okay, so today is our continuation of our webinar last week. But we have a different speaker today. And Jim, let's not waste time. Let's introduce our speaker, and I think you have her intro with you. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. All right. So we have our continuation for today at with the weather index based insurance, no? And we had a very interesting talk last week with Professor Diane Quaresma, and now we're going to hear from our speaker today, Dr. Aileen Lapitan. So, Dr. Lapitan has her research interests in policy processes, rural institutions, farmer livelihoods, practices and decision making, climate change adaptation in agriculture, as well as impact evaluation and local governance. So, she obtained her Doctor of Philosophy in Public Policy from the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, North Carolina, USA. She also obtained her Master of Arts in Economics from UP Diliman from the School of Economics, and she is a graduate of BS Agriculture Economics in the University of the Philippines, Las Bañas. So she served several positions already. Um, Now she is the assistant secretary at the UP Las Bañas Graduate School. She is also currently a assistant professor 5 at UP Las Bañas, and she was an associate scientist at the International Rice Research Institute. So she has held various different positions such as graduate assistant, assistant scientist. This was with also with Erie, and project development specialist at El Costa Realty and Development Corporation. And she was also a lecturer back in 2001 to 2002 at De La Salle University College of Business Administration. So Dr. Lapitan has had several awards and fellowships also. She was an adaptation finance fellow, certified expert in adaptation finance. This was from the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management in Frankfurt, Germany. She's an affiliate PhD thesis research scholar back in summer 2012 from the International Rice Research Institute, and she was also a graduate teaching fellow at fall 2011 from the University of North Carolina Charlotte Graduate School. She's published various types of she has several research publications already. Some of them are in challenges in climate information services, provisioning in Philippine agriculture, climate information adaptation in rice farming, embeddedness and policy attitudes, an exploratory study involving a social network of mayors in Bohol, Philippines. So these are very diverse research publications on, and especially in the economic side of things and social science of things, and also the governance of those and the nexus of all that. So without further ado, let's have let's welcome on our screen to our screen Dr. Aileen Lapitan.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dax. Good
Good,
afternoon, everyone.
Good
Okay, so
good
afternoon,
I'm
afternoon,
ma'am.
ma'am.
yeah, I'm very pleased to join you and to present the second part of our webinar series on weather index based insurance. So last
Yes.
Monday, we were treated to the science of things. Okay, obviously, which
Mm-hmm.
I am not
Yes.
an expert of, and today I'd like to share with you some of the experiences that we can find in development in the application of WeBe, as well as what we have found in our small study in Quezon, Philippines. So this study was, if you could see the slide, um, yeah. So if you could see the small study that I'm going to share to you with you this afternoon or this evening is a from the generous support of Frankfurt School of Finance and Management and the Thailand Development Research Institute in partnership with
Mm.
IDRC in Canada.
Is- yeah,
So
Canada.
yeah. So in the next slide, um, I'd like to present to you what we will go over this evening. So very briefly, just a recap of Weebie, okay, what we were talking about last Monday, and then I'll share with you Weebie as experience in developing countries, three of them, including the Philippines. And then the demand side prospects for WeBe is actually the presentation of the case from the Philippines, which is based on our study on upland rice farmers in Bondok Peninsula. And then, of course, lastly, I'd like to present some prospects that we could explore together for the use of WeBe in development. So, for the recap, okay, so what is WeBe in the next slide? Um, so as we've learned last time, it's an insurance product, okay? And it is designed around the construction of an index that is highly correlated with loss experiences. So, siguro if we want to try and parang simplify it for ourselves, it's like imagining that that a crop, let's say rice, is modeled or simplified as a product of several inputs, one of which would be rainfall or water. So that kind of model would tell you how much could be harvested if there's a certain level of input that we choose to be, let's say, water. So in our case, rainfall. So in that situation, rainfall would be a good reference, no, in order to determine how much, well, determine when to issue a payout, and of course, how much. Okay, so the three basic features of a WeBe would be um, an automatic weather station, of course, and then a weather parameter. So we like to say WeBe, but most of the time we're really just referring to rainfall index, and that's fine for now. And then, of course, we should have this schedule, no, that is based on the models, no, that would be estimated by our mathematicians or our actuarians. So if we go to the next slide, okay. So one thing that is a point of contention in WeBe is the concept of basis risk. So basically, it's a deviation of the losses at the individual producer level, from the regional average. So if we want to parang simplify the concept, it's like, when a farmer signs up for an insurance contract, okay, a WeBe contract, there are two outcomes, right? It's either the rain comes such that the trigger is hit, or it's not hit. Or of course, maybe if the index is toward drought, if the rains don't come, okay, sufficiently, then that's one scenario. Okay, trigger may be hit in that case, or there's enough rainfall so the trigger is not hit. But that's for the consideration of the trigger. Okay. But we also know that there are real world outcomes, which could be simplified into a bad harvest or a good harvest. So when we combine these, the farmer faces four scenarios, no? One is a scenario wherein the trigger is hit. Okay. So the weather station um, tells the insurance provider that there's too little rain or too much rain. Okay, so the trigger is hit, and as a result, it also shows as a bad harvest. Maybe nothing was salvaged, no, from in the field. So when you have that situation, obviously the loss of income from farming is compensated by the payout from the insurance. Okay, so that's one scenario. But you know, in reality, if you look at it, in many places in the country, okay, the landscape is not that even. There are high-lying places and there are low-lying places. So in that case, sometimes rains come or don't come in such a way that the trigger is hit, but the crops are not that much affected. Okay, so that means insurance issues pay out to the farmer, and thankfully, the farmer still gets to harvest from the farm for some reason. So that's what we call a happy accident. On the other hand, there would be cases wherein, so for the scenario that the trigger is not hit, okay, it seems like at the weather station measurements, everything is all good. There will be no payout. But the farmer faces two possible real world outcomes. One is when uh, there is no payout and there's no harvest. which we will call a really bad situation, right? But of course, in some cases, there's no payout, but that's okay because the farmer still gets to harvest, from the field. So those are the scenarios that farmers always also have to consider, because of course it would be always nice to have a happy accident, but what if they end up in a really bad situation? So that's one big consideration in weather index based insurance. So if you go to the next slide. Okay, so I also just want to share that we always talk about we be at the micro level, and that's fine because we really are at the stage wherein we a lot of agencies are trying to still pilot, provision of we be at the level of the producer or the farmer. So yeah, so that's the micro level. But then we can also consider the meso level provision, wherein there's a financier, let's say a credit provider, who may want to get insurance, okay, so weather index based insurance, in order to mitigate credit risk against the possibility of drought in an area. And then, of course, there could also be a macro level um, concept, wherein it could be a country or a region wishing to lessen the possibility of famine through the failure of a staple crop as a consequence of drought. Okay, so they may want to get insured. Okay, so the index is based on weather observations at the stations throughout the country. Okay. So if you go to the next slide, okay, okay, how was it in developing countries when they piloted it? So let me share with you this the story of India is very inspiring. So the concept was formally introduced in 2003. Okay, and eventually by 2007, um, the let's see. By 2007, the national government adopted it as an alternative to crop yield index insurance. And by 2012, WEB was availed by up to 12 million farmers. And these are farmers of 40 different crops, over 15 million hectares. So that's a very big success. And WEB contracts have also started to get offered in other Indian states. Okay, so in 2012, I believe this was in Bihar state in India. So later on, other states started borrowing the idea of WEB, and the providers were public and private agencies. So WEB schemes in India right now they cover a variety of crops and provide cover against adverse weather conditions, not just for rainfall, meaning excessive rainfall or in some cases drought, but also for low temperatures, high humidity, and high wind speed. Now, in the case of Thailand, which is presented in the next slide, the pilot was developed for corn, okay, with the technical assistance of World Bank, and this was done in 2006. And since 2007, the insurance product has been introduced to 7 provinces in Thailand. And in 2009, the rice weather index insurance was introduced. Now, in the Philippines, which is in the next slide, okay, we've had, I think there are three pilots that were already done. So that the first one was in 2007 through Micro Insure. So this is a micro insurance um, agency, okay, that has been very much into the WEB pilots. Then the next activity was led by ILO in 2009, and this was done in partnership with the national government. It was done in Agusan del Norte. And then in 2014, there were two projects. Okay, one was in Iloilo in Cagayan Valley, okay, for WIBC, okay, and then the other one was Wiwi Mindanao, okay, the UNDP funded project in partnership with DA and PCIC. I think Prof. Diane Quaresma mentioned this. I think she worked in that project earlier on. So Vivi Mindanao was already reported some gains. Like they reported providing insurance to over 2,400 farmers, with 178 of them availing about 29,000 $1,700 US, okay, from PCIC. Okay, so that's their report. Now, all of these so far what I've discussed are really on the provision side, or on the possibility of supplying, no, the WeBe as an insurance product to the market. Now, what I've been really curious about as a researcher is really the demand side, and that's really the motivation for the study that I proposed to do under the fellowship program with Frankfurt School of Finance. So in the next slide, if we go to the sorry, I went ahead of myself. So before I go into that, I just want to summarize some of the lessons that we could take out of these pilots. Okay, so number one, I think the pilots have shown, at least no, in terms of the cost point of view, that WeBe has some advantages over conventional insurance. Imagine, if I remember correctly, one of our students in CPAP who spoke here at in one of the webinars talked about administrative problems in delivery of insurance, no, in Region 4 4A. And it's all about, it's really a challenge when it comes to insurance readjustment, insurance adjustments, wherein getting the agents to go to the field and assess the loss, it's a lot of work. And sometimes these areas are so um, located, in remote places that it's really a nightmare for both sides, for PCIC and the farmer. So what WeBe can offer is a more convenient, less costly mechanism, no, to provide coverage. However, we have to balance it with the challenge of basis risk. Okay, because when you have um, when you have landscape like ours in the Philippines, it will always be the case that you have to consider that rainfall, okay, will not always be automatically determining losses or gains in harvest. So just because of the landscape. But that's only one of the risks, no? So in a tropical country, there are also pests and diseases. And weather index-based insurance does not account for that. So it may be that while the rainfall is quite okay, there might be uh, rise in population of pests, or maybe there are other plant diseases that would come by that's not related to rain. So that we cannot cover for that. So that's something we need to balance, no? So WeBe is quite promising. However, there are those there is basis risk that you have to consider. And also, just to add to that, when I was in conversation with one of my colleagues in Africa, they were even talking about linking Weebly with blockchain, and also with um, money transfer mechanisms. Like in our case, um, we have Smart Padala or GCash. Okay, so just imagine the possible benefit of an innovation wherein the farmer doesn't have to wait so long to get payout for losses that's linked to um, extreme behavior of the weather. So there's that, and at the same time, not being able to get the payout at the soonest time possible with just a text message, no, from Smart or from Globe. So there's a lot of promise to this. However, of course, there's a lot of challenges also, which hopefully the science can help mitigate. And then also, a major problem based on the experiences of other countries would be implementation needing a lot of data. And the problem is, even with the pilots, it's always the case that there's not enough historical weather data to work with. So they've had to come up with different strategies, no, to augment that. So even resorting to downloading of satellite climate data, no, just to parang augment the modeling part. Also, obviously, WeBe is a new concept, not just for the farmer, but also for a lot of insurers and even the regulators. So there's a need for education and capacity building. And finally, WeBe is seen as a useful innovation when we integrate it with an overall risk management strategy. So it's not like we're going to drop all of our other risk mechanisms, but maybe as a matter of being able to spread our risk, no, maybe WeBe could be added to our portfolio. So yun, some of the lessons that I'd like to share from the review of just a few of the many pilots around the world. Now, going to our study, and I refer to it as our study because this study, just to give credit to where credit is due, um, I implemented this research under the supervision, no, under the mentorship of Dr. Agnes Rolla. Um, so this is really our collaboration. So we've been really interested to find out. So what if WeBe is provided either by the public sector or maybe by the private sector? The question is, will farmers take up to it? And when I say farmers, I also want to refer specifically to farmers who are we would what we farmers who would we would describe as the ones who actually need them, those who are vulnerable to changes in the climate. In particular, the group of farmers that we studied in Quezon are rain-fed rice farmers. So imagine, um, it would be interesting to know, to understand what would drive them to actually pay for coverage. Okay, so this study is really about determining the drivers of Filipino rain-fed rice farmers' willingness to pay for WeBe. So in the next slide, um, I'll just share with you the conceptual framework that became our guide now in this study. So basically, we wanted to come up with a model to determine what would affect the willingness to pay for weather index-based insurance coverage. And we came up with four major concepts, no, four major determinants. So one is knowledge, okay, meaning um, depending on how informed the farmer is about climate change, okay, how it's here to stay, well, it is really here to stay, so we need to adapt. And how the farmer understand, or has the farmer even heard of WeBe, okay, or even conventional crop insurance? So does the farmer have some knowledge of it? Does the farmer have his own adaptive farm practices? So that's actually very important, no? Because if the farmer already has his own set of adaptation strategies, perhaps that could be something that would make him less excited about insurance coverage. And then, of course, what are the other means of protection that maybe the farmer already has? So we went out and explored this along with their attitudes. we uh in we wanted to know what were their perception of the concept itself, the concept of WeBe, as I tried to explain to you earlier. And what were their risk perceptions, and were they how risk averse are they? So all of these insights into the attitude of farmers, we have learned some already from past literature. So we just wanted to see whether this um, uh, what the other scholars are saying actually applies to the rain-fed rice farmers in Quezon. Also, we looked into socioeconomic characteristics. So what we're saying is here is that there's a high chance wealth and education have a lot of influence on the willingness to pay, as well as gender, as already argued by at least two recent publications, no, that we found, one from Gu and one from Actor, who was previously in Erie. No? And then, of course, one important consideration would be basis risk and the price of coverage, the premium. So, having this in mind, we proceeded to conduct our survey. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you how we designed it. Okay, so first, we went out to look for an area that's vulnerable to climate change. And Quezon province is up there, no, in the rankings. And one thing that's also important is, of course, we wanted to understand perceptions of farmers who would be most likely um, offered WeBe. Why? Because perhaps there's already a financing facility in the area. And we are informed by our previous researches that there are financing and insurance facilities in Quezon. So that could be something we could take advantage of. Maybe findings from this study could also inform startups who want to take advantage of existing facilities in Quezon. And so to date, there are 5 verified automatic weather stations in the province. So that's quite interesting, right? We were last week we were talking about you know availability of facilities that could help establish this weather information that we need. So in the next slide, um, could we go to the next slide? Yan. So this is what we did. First, we identified 2 municipalities that we could survey. And we made sure that we only selected those who had automatic weather stations installed by the national government. So remember last week we talked about how it's important that the government certifies the quality of equipment. So this one was installed by the Bureau of Soil and Water Management, and they are the ones who maintain, of course, in partnership with Pag-asa, these automatic weather stations. So we selected areas that were proximate to the automatic weather stations, and we set a parang a buffer zone, I would say. We made sure we only sampled farmers, rain-fed rice farmers within 5 kilometer radius of the automatic weather station in the town. And so we ended up with a sample size of 400 rain-fed rice farmers. Okay, so if you go to the next slide. Okay, so what did we employ? We employed contingent valuation method, usually for willingness to pay. That's what we use. And then we also estimated willingness to pay um, using the model for willingness to pay using the two-step Heckman estimation. So if you go to the next slide, okay. So let me just briefly share with you the highlights now of the results. I think that's the more interesting part of this presentation. What we found is this, that number one, Weeby is practically unheard of among the rice farmers. That is really not a surprise, right? It's an innovation still. And what's interesting is that 3/4 of the farmers, that's a majority, were willing to purchase coverage. So again, that's good news, no? And take note, when we did this, we made sure that they knew what they were responding to. So we came up with cue cards to first explain to them as with best effort, no, using cue cards, how the scheme works. Like we obviously this slide shows you that it's all in Tagalog, and we trained our enumerators to explain basis risk to them using the diagram that I explained earlier, all in Tagalog. So I guess that's a good thing. Majority of them would be willing to purchase coverage. Now, if you go to the next slide, this is the interesting part of the result. Oh, hindi pa pala, mamaya pa. Um, well, number one, sige. If you go to the next slide actually explains what the other farmers, those who were not interested in Weeby, said. Why are they not willing to buy Weeby? And if we could just zoom into the biggest slice. Okay, one reason the majority of us said that they don't have financial capacity to afford the premium. Okay, isn't that a common response anyway? We can't afford it. That's why we're not interested. That's what the 1/4 of the farmers said. Okay, that's right. Yan yung naka-red na yan. And then other answers would be if we could just is there a way to make it bigger? I just can't read it. Um, I know you could do it.
Hang on, ma'am. I
And
will
that,
try
sorry.
to switch it out. But sige po, while I'm zooming it,
Yeah.
andyan ba si Jim? Jim, hello? Are you there? Are you still here? Okay, anyway.
Well,
Uh,
if it's difficult, it's okay. We could just
no,
move
ma'am.
on
I
out.
will make a way. I will make a way.
Oh,
I'm just
anyway, sige, we
seeking help
probably
from
need a break.
Jim.
Yeah,
Maybe we can go into a little break muna. Or Jim, maybe
yeah.
if you have some questions for ma'am while I try to zoom in
Yeah.
to this slide, bro.
Yeah.
Ayan, sige.
Okay, so before we go into questions, ma'am, just a breather po, no,
Yeah.
na we have people watching from Bae, which is not too far from Los Baños. We have people from watching from Bae, from Mandaluyong, from Santa Maria, Bulacan.
Wow.
We also have somebody watching from Pagadian City po,
Hello po.
Mindanao, if I'm not mistaken. And then Lipa, Batangas. I think this
Mhm.
is your former student po, si Darwin Landicho.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then
Hi, Darwin.
meron from Davao del Norte, from Baybay City. I think this is from Leyte. And
Oh,
then we
okay.
have from
PSB.
San Pedro, Laguna.
Okay.
And then from Siniloan, Laguna, and also Olongapo City. Yeah, so
Okay. Hello.
we have a good number of people from different parts of the country.
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
sana ay
Pero
ano, nakita.
very interesting po yung makita yung application, at least, or even also the willingness to pay. So I
Exactly.
think this is a nice setup po, the part 2, in
Uh-huh.
connection to the part 1, which is conceptual, in terms of introducing Weeby,
Yes.
how it was developed and all that, and then now we can see the use, and it's also the assessment of how willing the target users would, or at least the level of willingness to pay among
Yep.
target users po. Yeah. I think I'll reserve my questions for later po, ma'am. When
Sure.
when I get
Uh-uh.
when I also get to know more of the result highlights that you were wanting to
Okay.
point out po.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far we don't have any questions from the stream pa naman po.
Okay,
I
great.
think they might
Uh-uh.
be coming in later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Dax, are you okay with the Zoom
Sorry.
na?
Otherwise, no, I can adjust. Yeah. Is Diane here? Wala pa si Diane.
Wala po.
Okay.
Ma'am, eto mukhang nagawan ko na siya ng paraan. Hang on. Okay.
Sorry, ang demanding ko ba? Yan.
Hindi ma'am, hindi ma'am. Ito yung
Oh, yeah, you can
na-discover
do
ko lang
it.
din isang
I
araw.
know.
Yan.
Oo, alam ko nakita mo na
Oh,
yan. Yeah,
yun.
di ba? So if you just scroll
Yun.
to downward, so I've already shown yung no financial capacity. Isn't that a common response na, why we can't afford it? I'll leave the audience to parang, ano ba, to verbalize, no, what they think of that response. And then, other reasons, sabi nila, it does not, we don't trust the reliability of rainfall measurements, no, by instruments. So they're really wary of the equipment itself. And then also there were answers like, the mechanics of the scheme is just too difficult. It's difficult to understand. Okay, even with best efforts of our enumerators, people were still, not convinced that it's really a good thing. And then, if we scroll a little bit to the top corner left, yan. Sabi, and this is very wise response. Weeby does not cover pests and diseases. So you see, this is what something we could appreciate from farmers, no? Uh, they farm, but they know their work, no? They know how farming works. You tell them, I have coverage for you, and with this technology, it will cover drought or maybe flooding, and then he tells you, but what about pests and diseases? So that's the wisdom of the farmer for you. So these are very interesting responses, no, on their unwillingness to buy, no, not even to pay pa, but to get covered. And if you go to the next slide, okay, so this is where we try and make sense of something that seems to be parang ano ba, talagang puzzle. Okay, so majority of the farmers, they welcome the idea of a wheelie, right? However, okay, so yung binary choice. The choice to get weeby is okay, but if you go to the willingness to pay, our estimates show, okay, and this is not shown here, um, that ano, sige. While we are in this part, okay, di ba ang tanong natin, ano yung drivers? What are the determinants? You would notice a very interesting thing. Of course, there's um, household assets, measure of wealth. Okay? Hindi siya masyado, no? Almost zero. If you, can you scroll up a little? Yan. Okay, so yung willingness to pay, um, yung rice area niya, it's negative, but it's significant. Okay, so we'll look into that later. Now, if you could just scroll downward again. Now, let's just look at the choice, no, the decision to get WB. You see two asterisks there. Okay, that's an indicator of significance, no. And what we see here is this, negative but significant yung age, no. So the younger ones, they're more inclined to get coverage, okay? And being female, negative, okay? Which is quite consistent with some of the previous studies na negative. Bakit pag babae ay ang tendency ay not to get covered? Okay, that's interesting. And with non-farm income, medyo maliit lang yung amount niya. But if you just unzoom, okay, I want to show you yung observation ko dito in a statement. So majority of the farmers welcome the prospect of getting coverage. Okay, but when we computed the willingness to pay amount, okay, what's interesting is that it remains below the conventional insurance premium values. Okay, so they want to get covered, but the amount they want to pay is not comparable to what is being charged for conventional insurance. So that's where the problem would lie now. Yung amount, the actual amount is the problem. Um, I I made note of the amount and I'm going to just refer to it a little. Um, oh yeah. So what we did was we conducted a focus group discussion after the survey. So just like what you would do in a social research. And from our FGDs, it revealed that the women are usually assigned the task of performing record keeping, okay, and budgeting. And remember, mostly this is their task at home also. So their response to coverage may be linked to the results, no? That being female decreases the likelihood of preferring WB coverage. So the insurance coverage is seen as a cost, okay? Cost to the household and not as a risk strategy. It's not a risk transfer strategy. So that's one thing that we got from probing the data through FGD. Now, if you go to the next slide, okay, let's go to the next slide. I want to show you yung pattern with regard to the effect of rice area or farm size. You will notice that the smaller area, so farmers that till less than 1 hectare, okay, this is their willingness to pay. For Katanawan, it's 3,600, okay, per hectare premium. Okay, for Locust, it's 1,725. Okay, but when it's 1 to 3 hectares in size, okay, which means a bigger farm, the willingness to pay per hectare is lower, no, from 3,600 to 1,500, from 1,700 to 1,200 almost. So uh, that's ano man tawag dyan? That's the puzzle, no? How is it that the smaller farmers have higher willingness to pay amounts than the relatively bigger farmers? Okay, so that's something that we also probed in our FGD. So just to share with you what we found. Okay, so let me see. Um, so we went back to the site, okay, and we tried to validate this result. And basically, what we found is that whether the farm is small or large, farmers seem to view insurance premium as an expense rather than as an investment or as a risk transfer strategy. And that's where the problem lies. Okay. When they see this as an expense, of course, if you have a bigger amount of land, of course, must you see it as something that you don't want to pay more of. No, hindi siya on a per hectare basis, but as a whole. And that tells you a lot about how our farmers actually view the farming enterprise. So medyo kailangan pa natin ng konting effort to help them, no, get to a place where they actually see certain expenses as investments in farming as a way to as a way of risk strategy rather than money coming out. And this has a lot to do with our long tradition of um, what do you call this, subsistence farming, no? And one side story to this is that most farmers in the areas that we surveyed, they suffer losses year in and year out, especially in the last years because of climate change, no? El Nino, drought, etc. And no matter what happens, they would never walk away from rice farming despite the losses. And when we ask them this, why do you bother? They say, we want to produce rice for to eat at home. Okay. So when the motivation to produce rice is for subsistence, then all the more that insurance is seen as an expense, no? Parang hindi nila ma-separate 'yon from hindi nila ma-separate yung idea na in terms of expense in a farm enterprise at saka expense in the household. And when farmers keep looking at it that way, then that's an issue. Okay. Now, let's go now and knowing what we know now from our study, let's explore prospects for WeBe in development. So it's not really a bad story to tell. No, it's just very challenging, I guess. And this is challenge for those who work in development. So what is the work that is still laid out for us? Well, there still needs to be testing and validation and further probing of the role of the drivers. So far, remember, we've only sampled 400. We've found the role of gender significant. So maybe we could further probe on that. Okay. And maybe use it for a more innovative design for Weebly. Maybe there's another way to deliver it in such a way that you deal with the anxieties, okay, if I may call it anxieties of the women in the household when it comes to spending for coverage. That's only one. And then, of course, um, probing also yung role of the size of the farm. Um, could it be that with further capacity building in terms of enterprise development, uh, even those that perception could be addressed? And also, we could also look into the development based on the examples in other countries of an array of PB products, no? Those that could cater to other weather-related risk exposures in crops. So imagine India has several, no? And I know there's at least a study that was done in Benguet that looked at the crop model for vegetables, no? So ang kanya namang mini-measure, ang trigger naman niya would be temperature because I think also Ma'am Quaresma mentioned last week na frost, could could be something. Well, we all know frost destroys a lot of high valued crops in Cordillera, so that could be one. And then of course there's wind velocity and many others. Also, there could be more inquiry into the extent of the scheme in terms of impact on economic size of each transaction. So remember, maybe we still have to see, okay, and decide whether delivering Weebly to small farmers is the way to go. Could it be that Weebly is more appropriate to other groups of farmers? Perhaps. So that's something for us to explore. And also, there's also a need for active participation of national and I always like to add these days local government in agricultural reinsurance programs and schemes. And I've been exploring this idea because you know, our local governments have they have disaster risk they have DRR funds. And sometimes, when some of these calamities hit, maybe flooding, they spend these funds to provide yung emergency needs no ng mga tao. But perhaps index insurance could be one way for the local government to also insure itself against yung threats ng disasters no that would affect the farmer. So but the question is, of course, of all of the many priorities of local governments, saan to, where will this fall? And then if we go to the next slide, okay, I think I only have a couple more. It's also significant to recognize the ongoing efforts, especially of PCIC. No, back in 2017, I interviewed Mr. Kahupom, who was at the helm of PCIC at the time, and yeah, he talked about their own initiatives, no, in developing, bundling, um, different products, index insurance products, and then how they've tried to explore capacity building of providers, okay, and financial education of clients. So I'm pretty sure um, there are ongoing efforts, and it would be interesting to hear about those also. And also, let's not forget that there are international development organizations that are at work, no? And it's important to highlight that there's a lot of benefit from collaborative transnational efforts to build, sustain, and sustain the intensive database needed for knowledge sharing and capacity building. So, dalawa, it's two-sided. There's the technical part of it, and of course, there's the financing part of it. And if you read about it, you learn about the work of the World Bank and its Global Index Insurance Facility. There's IFAD and World Food Program's Weather Risk Management Facility. There's CCAPS of CGIAR. And ILO, they have Impact Insurance Facility. So these are places that we could try and look for opportunities, no, to apply concepts like WEBE to development. And I think that's the last slide that I want to talk about. The rest are really just references if you want to read more about weather index based insurance. And yeah, um, if you have questions, let's try and discuss your questions.
All right, thank you, Ma'am Eileen. So we have Jim. Before we jump to your questions, maybe we can answer some of the questions from the audience first.
Sure, sure.
So, all right. So one question from Ilor James Otero. Mahal po ba yung Weebie, ma'am? Sorry, hindi po kasi ako naka-tune in sa part 1. So,
Mm.
is there
Uh,
maybe a price range or yeah?
Ano siya, tricky siya na tanong kasi wala naman talaga siyang, wala pang commercialized na Weebie ngayon. So what we have are pilots, and the pilots are really, they're provided but not, you know, farmer beneficiaries don't pay for coverage at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, walang price sa ngayon, but there are our actuarians can give you like a, you know, an estimate. Okay, and what we
Mm-hmm.
know is that it's higher, no, the estimated
Oh,
premiums are currently higher than the conventional.
okay pa. So, another question from Darwin Landicho. Hi, Dr. Eileen.
Hi.
Very interesting study. I am curious if there are weather-related socio-cultural factors observed since some traditional farmers may have beliefs, superstitions, or customs tied to weather disturbances or environmental
Mm.
conditions.
Um, our study was not able to document any of that. Siguro
Mm-hmm.
if we design a study that targets IPs, okay, who are more, they would probably have a richer knowledge systems, no, that's related to that. Maybe that's something that we could do, you know, in the
Yeah.
future.
Mm.
Okay. All right. Please, if ever anyone in the audience has more questions from Mama Eileen, please do send them via the comment section. But in the meantime, we will jump to Jim's questions. Jim.
Okay. Ma'am, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for putting also the conceptual aspect of Weeby from Prof. Diane
Mm-hmm.
into also a perspective of how it also looks like on the ground and how farmers are responding to the idea. Which what I really caught was the key highlight was that the the perspective towards insurance is more of a an expense rather than an investment, or at least a risk management strategy option po, no. um One of the things that I was wondering po, I saw that the based on the that was a regression po, ma'am, tama po ba,
Yes.
na ano the the income and willingness to pay relationship somehow was inversely related.
Yeah.
um does that show po, or at least even suggest anything about if farmers have a diversified farming system instead of a monoculture system such as just rice or rain-fed rice alone? Would
Mm-hmm.
that suggest somehow that there would be a possible increase in terms of their interest or willingness to pay for an insurance po. Kasi I'm just assuming that based on the figures and also what you highlighted, that because of only one crop yung meron sila, rice lang
Mm.
po, and then
Mm.
you also said that there was a factor of some of the farmer respondents as looking at rice for subsistence.
Yep.
If it was a diversified farming system, do you think it would have been another scenario as well?
Yeah, I think that's a very good insight. I would agree that this was a more diversified farming system, of course, when you diversify your produce, no, your activities in the farm, that's also your way of managing your risk, diba? So you sort of
Mm,
try to finance some of the losses with the gains in other parts of the farm. So
other crops.
definitely,
Mm,
yes. Yes, other crops, income from other crops. So definitely, if you go back to the table, of course, di ba yung mini-mention mo, non-farm income nga yung positive yung effect niya
mm,
sa choice to get PV. So that's really well, I'm not surprised with that kasi at the end of the day, if you see we become sa ngayon ha, dun sa level ng pagka-appreciate nila, if they see WeBe as an expense, then definitely their income would drive their choice to get covered. It's always a question of can I afford it, di ba? So, but
mm,
the flip side of it is if the farmer is smart enough to already have his own way of diversifying his risk, di ba? Kasi di ba diversification of your farming activities is also you could also interpret it as a way to diversify your risk. So if he has his
mm,
own, if he's savvy enough to do that, that could also influence him to say, I don't need the weeby anymore because I can handle the risk myself. Diba?
yeah.
So,
So
so
it's a
that's
way
the
of
flip side of
adapting.
it. It's a way of adapting. That's why, if you go back to the conceptual framework, dun sa knowledge, no, at saka dun sa
Mm,
perception, importante talaga na makita rin yun, matest talaga yun. Because, although we didn't have as much data on that, um, kung mapuprove lang natin through empirical data, that would be also nice na those who are more
mm,
savvy with their own strategies of risk mitigation outside of insurance, maybe they don't want insurance anymore. And that's fine. But because
opo.
at the end of the day, you want farmers to be resilient. Okay? And if
Yeah,
that is doing it, if they're doing it themselves, then well and good. But
yeah.
majority of our farmers are monocroppers. Maybe,
Mm,
on another discussion, this is an argument for diversified farming.
yeah.
Di ba?
Which is based dun sa model po na pinakita niyo, ma'am, on the conceptual framework. I assume that framework was basically the model already for willingness to pay is equal to knowledge plus
Mm,
attitude plus socioeconomic
mm,
characteristics
right,
plus
right.
product design, tama, with all the
Yep.
other coefficients that come out of the regression analysis. Maybe one factor given this discussion is that would the cropping system or the level of diversification also be a factor to their willingness to pay? Ano?
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
just following this
Yes,
discussion, yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-mm. Um, bro, do you have questions? I have another question, couple more questions
All right, we have some couple
here,
of
but
questions
baka ikaw may tanong ka.
from the audience muna. So, ma'am, meron pong nagtatanong regarding
Okay, sige, sige.
sa brand ng weather link na ginagamit. Would you be able to answer this?
I'm not aware of that. Weather link,
O-
hindi ko alam yung
Or
context eh.
yung parang yung weather system po, yung automated weather system na ginamit.
Yeah, yeah. Ay, I don't
Kasi
have
po
it right now, but there are
may
several.
nagtanong po, ayan, Davis
Ah,
Vantage Pro po ba ang ginamit? Or meron po kayong other brands na may re-recommend?
okay. So,
Ayan.
this is a socioeconomic study, no? So, this is what I can, this is technical. So, in another study that looks at climate information services, pwede nating puntahan yung unit. Pero this is what I know. The sites that we studied were sites where BSWM installed the same specs of EWS. And BSWM installed 100 of those across the country. So if you want to
Okay.
know more about that, you have to go and check with
Yes.
PSWN kung ano yung specs na ginamit nila.
This is for
Mm.
standardization's sake, ano ma'am? Tama po ba?
Yes. And I think it was also touched on dun sa, sorry if I overtalk. Um, dun sa discussion last week, we talked about calibration. Okay,
Yung
so that's why
standards.
standards eh. Um, whatever, let's say, government even procures for this particular initiative, it has to always be approved by Pag-asa because they are our authority in
Mm-hmm.
weather, ano ba,
Yes.
instrumentation. And it's not
Mm.
just approved, no? There's a maintenance work that goes with that. It's
Yes.
calibration work. And it has to be done also under, kumaga, in collaboration with Pag-asa. So that's how tedious the work is. But that's how you get reliable data. Kasi, marami naman
Yeah.
talaga, actually, maraming private na EWS. Like Aboitiz would have several across the country. Um, they use it for their own purposes. Pero let's say if
Mm.
government is going to fund WeBe on basis of data, uh, it has to be it has to be from instruments that were calibrated and monitored. Kumbaga,
Mm.
maintained by Pag-asa. Yun lang talaga.
Yeah. Yung accurate yung lumalabas na
Uh,
nakukuhang
kumbaga,
data po na ano.
yeah, remember, even the farmer, no, when we asked them, bakit ayaw mo? The farmer said, well, I don't trust the equipment. That's important. So not
Yeah.
just the farmer, but the providers. They also
Yeah.
have to trust the system.
Mm. Tama. So there has to be some way of bro nakamute ka.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead, bro. Go ahead. Ikaw muna.
Okay. Sige. So ma'am, there was a mention of yung driver, yung gender, no, as one of the factors that
Yeah.
somehow that somehow surfaced in the highlights. But I was
Mm-mm.
wondering because normally when we do these kinds of social research with farmers, ang target respondents normally mga lalaki na farmers, ganyan. Maganda po na kasama yung wife dito sa ano sa or
Yes.
at least yung mga
Mm.
mothers or of the household kasama po siya. I was wondering also po, ma'am, because there was a study with Phil Rice that they did something on what they called an infomediary campaign na
Mhm.
yung mga bata po may factor sila sa uh, pag-bring ng bagong ways of doing rice farming dun sa mga farms ng mga parents nila. So I was wondering if the voice of their kids of these farmers would also, would their opinion also matter in a way na pa or ma reliable po yung Weeby or reliable po yung, kailangan po natin kumuha ng Weeby. Would that have also been a factor to look into or or hindi rin ganun ka considered po muna na ano?
Well, siguro, and siguro I'm talking from a researcher's perspective. If we adjust the unit of analysis to the household, um, para ma-document
Mm.
natin yung intra-household dynamics, yeah, that could be
Yeah.
explored.
Mm.
But it just happens that the unit of analysis here is the farmer who is the household head. So yun lang yung
Yeah.
limitation din.
Apa,
Yung
yun yung
study.
scope po na ano. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Do you
Or
still have other questions, bro?
yes, meron
Or
pa
from the
mga question.
audience?
Meron pa mga questions from the audience. Correlated ito. So, is WeBe technology only or is the WeBe system only applicable to rice or can it be also applied to perennial crops such as coffee and coconut?
Okay. If the question is, can it be applied to other crops? The quick answer is yes. As to how soon, it really depends on the availability of crop models. Bakit
Mm,
nauna ang rice? Kasi mas available ang crop models
crop
for
models.
rice, no?
Mm.
There have been pilots that were done for corn and potato in other countries. So that
Mm-hmm.
could be something that we could take off from. And and remember, I've only been talking about rainfall index, no? But if you consider, let's say, temperature,
Temperature.
ano, sa index,
Mm.
there's a high chance that the high value crops up in the north, we could benefit from it also. But there has to be a crop model. So why did I mention that? Because by accident, I stumbled upon someone who's doing modeling of vegetables in
Mm.
Cordillera. So, and
Wow.
she's, yeah, I think the prospect there was, well, there's a way to predict losses based on temperature fluctuations, so might as well do an index on it and maybe use it as basis for insurance coverage. Okay, so what about
Mm.
perennial crops? Why not? If there's an agronomist who wants to collaborate with an actuarian about it, why not? You know, so the challenge is on, I guess, for the most part, on the academe, no, to help with the generation of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay.
tama
Alright,
po.
bro. Ikaw muna ulit
Okay.
kung
I
meron ka
have
pa.
I have one last question. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, ma'am, based on the survey or the survey that was conducted, the results of the willingness to pay and all those represented in the pie chart yung opinions ng farmers po. I would assume they're speaking from an individual capacity po no na they don't have the capacity to pay for this their income, their household income is low, that's why they don't want to consider it, and all of those things. What about the factor po if these farmers are connected or at least a member of a cooperative po? Would that have also somehow played into a slight increase maybe of a willingness to pay, given that, for example, if a cooperative where all of these farmers are members of engage with the Weebly service provider, and then kumbaga they're not only paying for the Weebly but also other
Yeah.
benefits as a member of the cooperative po.
That's a possibility. The more you tweak yung mechanism of delivery, the more the willingness to pay changes. There's a study by actor, AKTER, that looks into, sabi nga niya, I hope I remember the study correctly, negative yung motivation ng female farmers for coverage. But when it is presented to them as delivered in groups. So, yun yung parang sinasabi mo.
Mm,
When delivery is by group, nag-increase yung willingness nila to get coverage. So,
mm,
there's a lot that,
mm.
kasi nga, syempre, nasi-share mo yung risk, nasi-share mo din yung burden. So, there's a lot of promise in there. Basically, that's my point. Na that can be done.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, kasi if tama naman po yung valid din naman po kasi yung assessment ng farmers na dahil mababa yung income nila at for subsistence, and it's also because I think of the culture na ganun nga po yung pagtingin natin sa insurance, it's seen as an expense rather
Mm-hmm.
than a risk management strategy that's not the priority. So, pero ang Pinoy po kasi, ang kultura ng Pinoy is very strong on peer culture, no, na yun na nadadala ng peer pressure. So, kung
Mm-hmm.
we play into the culture of peer pressure and maybe talk to a cooperative and say, uy, kailangan natin to, tulong-tulong tayo dito, magka-avail ng ganito. Maybe, just maybe lang po na
Yeah.
maging isang way to market Weeby that can impact a community po na ano.
Right. So I hope we are parang we are taking in these really bright ideas, no. Not just to inform policy and public provision. I think I would encourage anyone who is from the third sector who might be considering, a project on this, that could be something that they could factor into whatever they want
Mm.
to cook up, no. So really parang on a
Yeah.
personal level, I would really encourage na somehow people explore private provision, or if we could invite more private players into the market for Weeby, why not, 'di ba? Although of course we know na ang isa kasing
Yeah.
convenient din sa public provision, we have the RSBSA ba 'yon? Yung sa
Yes
government,
po.
no? So when the farmer is in the registry,
Yes po.
he can get coverage. So that's one thing that farmers
Mm.
can tap also. Naisip ko lang.
Pero this was more of conventional insurance ang pino-provide po, tama
Yeah.
po ba, ma'am?
Yes, oo. But what
Mm.
if,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
if we, yeah, that could be one way to publicly provide coverage. But
Yeah.
the thing is,
True.
it's more than just affordability. And this is, I guess, parang a commentary to also the work of PCIC. Hindi ko na feature yung ibang sagot nila dun sa survey, but one of the insights we got was it is really important to the farmer kung ano yung past experience niya with crop insurance, whether it's conventional or
Mm.
weedy. Because even if it's free, if were not able to get the timely
Payout.
response, payout, at saka in a timely manner, even if it's free, they would be unwilling to get coverage also. So it's a challenge to
Mm.
our to our organizations. No? It's a challenge to our providers. Na more than
Okay.
affordability, it's the yung delivery itself, no, yung efficiency of
Yung
delivery.
efficiency ng system. Opo.
Yes, exactly. I think there's a paper in JPAD that also discussed that.
Mm.
One of
I
our
think that's
students.
what Arman's paper was on, ma'am. Yung
Ah,
efficiency ng delivery. Opo. I think that was the
yeah.
one.
Yeah, yun.
Yes.
So that's good. So at least no,
Yeah.
yun talaga yung lumalabas sa pag-aaral ng mga current na scholars. So I
Mm.
hope no that this could help yung ating government at saka syempre yung mga advocates din sa agricultural sector.
Opo. Yeah. Okay, Dax, do you have any more questions?
Actually, bro, wala na akong questions, but we have one more question from the audience. Before we
Okay.
go, siguro,
Uy, kilala ko yan.
si
Oh,
Sir
kilala ko yan
Yuji
ah.
Enriquez.
Kilala mo
Ayan,
rin siya?
kilala nyo rin?
Yes po, ma'am. Ah,
Hindi mo kilala yan.
Hindi.
magkasabay kami mag-MS Ag Econ po, ma'am.
Really? Hi, Eugene from
Yes.
Erie.
Ayan. So, what do you think are the key challenges for mainstreaming or taking WeBe to scale, particularly considering the technical, institutional, and capacity readiness of our government?
Wow. Yeah, our dream is to
Medyo,
to take it up a notch, no? Parang nga siya, upscale, outscale ba yung concept. I mean, I think we're done with the piloting now, but the reality is the institutions probably are not yet ready. The facilities still need fixing. Hindi lang yung physical infrastructure.
Mm.
Capacity, no? Capacity for we need more scientists, no? We need more weather scientists. I don't know the exact term, but people who are actually technical, no? Who will help us manage the equipment and maintain the equipment. Okay, because we need
Mm.
good data, and even if we have the best equipment, if we don't have enough technical people, then it's going to be parang wala. Medyo matagal pa down the road pa yung pag-uptake nito. But we are hopeful, no? So siguro we all know that
Mm.
there's a legislation that's up in Congress in support of weather index-based insurance. Maybe we could continue to
Oh.
our advocacy. Yeah. So we could continue our advocacy towards these things that government actually invest in necessary infrastructure in order for us to have access to good data, and hopefully we'll
Yeah.
also have the enabling environment so that not just the government but even the private sector would be encouraged to engage in these innovations, because these are really good innovations, don't you think? No, it's really, as
Yeah.
my boss in graduate school likes to say, ano, fourth industrial revolution, di ba? Yung mga ganyan. So,
Agri
um,
4.0.
di ba? So, why not?
Mm.
So, I don't know,
Yeah.
I hope na-satisfy si Eugene dun sa sagot.
I think you mentioned something very crucial also kanina, ma'am, dun sa yung pag-summarize niyo po when you said something about engaging or empowering also the local government units
Yeah.
by embedding the WeBe strategy into their disaster risk reduction management plans po.
Yes, oo. We need
Because
more buy-in,
I think
no?
that's where the funds are. If we're talking practicality,
Yes.
nandun yung funds eh.
Yeah, I would like to be able to
Mm-mm.
articulate it better so that more people will get convinced na while the resources are at the local government level, we need to convince them that maybe investing in things like Weebly is a way for them to get better at their job. Kasi you sort of insure your constituents, no? So that you don't have to spend for them when they, fall into hard times. I mean, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the point of
Yeah.
having these funds? So maybe better management of these disaster risk reduction funds
Funds.
in terms of, investing in risk management mechanisms could be, the way to go. Sana mas
Yeah.
mapag-usapan natin. Maybe I'm not seeing everything from my perspective, but I
Mm.
think there's something there that we could explore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
True.
I think definitely there's something there kasi
Nice.
yun nga, nasimulan na siya nung RSBSA eh. So the farmers are already registered
Mm-hmm.
to some degree and siguro expand. Ang maganda din siguro ma'am, expand din siya to yun nga no, sana magkaroon ng mga crop models pa for other crops and hopefully if merong makagawa animals din kung possible yan.
Why not, 'di ba?
For livestock and for poultry, for swine and for cattle, hopefully may ganun din.
Yeah.
And
We need big data.
big data is
That's
the future.
Yeah. Yep.
Pero
really
yun,
big data.
ayun ano, pero yung yun talaga siguro I think it's also like I think it has been discussed yun during the questions ni Jim yung it's a cultural thing din ano yung
Mm-hmm.
insurance talaga
Yep.
Yeah.
the uptake of insurance parang hindi siya parang us Filipinos were not really
Mm-mm.
savvy or really kept abreast
Insurance
sa mga
inclined.
insurance or yes hindi tayo drawn to that kasi yun nga most of us are living paycheck to paycheck so we really can't
Exactly.
spare or parang it's a parang tingin natin kasi sa insurance is a luxury
Yes.
na parang
Mm.
it's not hangga't makakatipid ka pwede naman wag na lang 'di ba pero yun nga we don't
Mm.
know if disaster hits or yun nga ma-hit yung mga weather indices. So I
Mm-hmm.
think education then is really critical and I
Yeah.
salute Ma'am Aileen and her team and everybody there sa SIPAF who's been doing the work and trying to figure out how we can laymanize and maybe make the people understand why insurance is sorely needed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-mm.
Ma'am, last. Para sa mga viewers din po natin, ma'am. Say for example, if there's a viewer here or anybody else na from the private sector, what would be a practical way to start venturing into the Weeby? Should we wait for the check marks to say na may equipment na po ang LGUs or what would be the practical way for private sector to be engaged or even third sector, no, civil
Yeah.
society or NGOs na nakita nila what's a practical way for them to move forward with Weeby po?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, for all we know, some people are already beginning. Of course, we don't have the data right now, but I'm pretty sure there's at least one or two organizations that are working on it. But to quickly answer your question, you start where you can. So if it's a small pilot again, but it's an initiative of that group, you start where there's an existing facility. So I mentioned there
Mm.
are 100. So you could start by choosing the best of the 100 and test your product in UPLB, and of course I'm selling my colleagues at UPLB. I'm not I'm not an actuarian, but we have really good actuarians as you've seen last week. Yung teams namin sa IMSP that can work with these interested parties, in maybe
Mm.
polishing, fine tuning models so that they
Yeah.
can, apply. So you start where like, I mentioned we chose Quezon because not only because it's vulnerable to climate change. We chose Quezon because they had automatic weather stations and they had access to cooperative banks that can actually serve as um, intermediaries for delivery of
Conduits.
crops, conduits, yeah, conduits for crop insurance. So
Mm.
yung strategy na yun, that was the strategy that yung isa naming project, the AMIA project, funded by DA Bar, actually did. So when we were engaged to do it, so yung team ni Dr. Rolla, I was fortunate to be part of it. Those were the criteria that we considered. Availability of
Mm.
financing facility, availability of the weather station.
Weather
But
station.
yeah, yeah, of course. And of course there's the need. Is it vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
to risks? So yun. So
Yeah.
you start where there are facilities. That's the quick
Okay.
answer.
Nice. Thank you po. So, para sa mga viewers na nag-iisip dyan na paano mag-venture, yun,
Paano
may check
pasukin?
marks. May three initial checklist items na binigay si Dr. Aileen.
Nakatik na naman
Yeah.
tayo.
Sana. O baka
Alright.
gusto niyo mag-invest.
Baka. That's
Open-minded po kami, ma'am.
No.
that's something to
Kape tayo.
consider. Kape tayo, ma'am. Kape tayo.
Ah.
Sometime, pagka medyo pwede nang maglapit-lapit.
Oo. Oo. So, hindi ko naman kayo bebentahan ng Weebie. Yan. So, but this is just one of the things that I was fortunate to look into. So, natatawa nga kanina when Jim said, yung iba-iba nga na yung mga studies ko. Pero, if I could, continue with, advocating for this particular intervention, why not? If it's going to help. So,
Of
yun.
course.
Nice.
Okay. So,
Okay, Dak.
another knowledge-filled day for Agri 2020 has passed. And of course, hindi natin nakakalimutan ng ating tradisyon dito sa Agri 2020. Ma'am Aileen,
Mhm.
kung nanood naman kayo nung last week and yung mga previous weeks,
Yeah.
so meron kaming Batian Corner dito where we give our guest an opportunity to greet everybody and anybody who she wants to greet. So, Ma'am Aileen, you had the floor. Please limit your greetings lang po to 1 hour maybe.
One. Hindi, sige. No, I always see Tita Dulce Elasegi here. So I want to say hi to her. She's one of ayan, si Ma'am Dulce. One of our seniors in SIPA, college, Center for Policy Studies. So, yeah,
Mhm.
hi Tita Dulce. I hope you're
Hello.
enjoying your retirement. And also my friends from Erie, okay, who are watching. And hopefully, and also my students, past and present. So, hi, hello. Thank you for your support. Yun
Yes.
lang. And hi, I don't know if Ma'am Rola is watching, but if she's not here right now live, I'm pretty sure she'll see this. So, hi, Ma'am Rola. Thanks for all the guidance.
Ayun. Alright.
Yan.
So, yun na po ba yun, ma'am? Wala na po?
Yes.
Alright. So, Jim?
Alright. So, una, thank you po, ma'am, for accepting our invitation to
Yes.
to be on the show and to also add to what Prof. Diane also talked about on Weeby and also sharing the results of that study with us and the audience po. So, I'd like to thank my parents, my family, my sisters, and my brother-in-law and their kids. I shout out to them, and also to my fiance, shout out then, and to her family. So, our viewers, thank you again for tuning in. I hope you got something. May tatlong items na kayong initial checklist from Ma'am Aileen. If you want to pursue that, that's something that you can venture into, and I think the country would benefit from that talaga. So
Yes.
again, thank you Ma'am Aileen for accepting our invitation. Si Ma'am Aileen ay
Welcome.
dating prof ko po sa public policy.
Yun pala. Alright. Thank you,
All right,
Jim.
Dax.
Ano? Okay,
Okay.
so, ayun, I would just like to repeat, we would like to thank Dr. Aileen Lapitan for gracing and gracing our show and sharing her knowledge regarding this particular topic. And I'm really excited to see Weeby move forward, So maybe yun nga, no, yung mga sinasabi nating private sector players diyan, baka alam nyo na yung mga blockchain and big
Yeah.
data na narinig ko kanina, medyo umuugong yung tenga ko Parang narinig ko na to somewhere Pero sige. So thank you again, Ma'am Aileen, for accepting our invitation. And we hope that if ever meron pa kayong mga agriculture-related studies in the future,
Mhm.
you would be more than welcome, and sana willing kayo to share your findings here on Agri 2020 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And para
Or
naman
other
po dun,
professors in CPAF.
Yeah.
ayun po, shoutout sa mga taga Sipaf.
Hindi,
Oo nga.
kung baka
Um,
may mga agri-studies sila,
Yeah.
pwede rin
yes,
dito.
please do share them. And ayun po, para sa mga nag-aabang, para naman sa ating mga e-certificate na gustong mag-claim ng e-certificates dyan, please take note of the link below, dreamagritech.com/weeby-part-2, dreamagritech.com/weeby-part-2. Once again, dreamagritech.com/weeby-part-2. So the deadline for that evaluation form is tonight at 10 p.m. So please fill up your post-webinar form by 10 p.m. so you can claim your e-certificates. So all e-certificates, including the last one for part 1, sabay-sabay na po natin yung i-release on July 20, 2020. So, guys, thank you again for watching. Since we're on the topic of CPAF, I would like to greet one of our mentors din, former dean nga ba? Si Ma'am Jim,
Ma'am
tama
Buji.
ba?
Si Ma'am Cardenas.
Ma'am
Is
G.
she watching?
Cardenas.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am.
Hopefully, Ma'am, next time. So, we would just like to greet her, and of course, I would like to greet my parents who's watching, and my girlfriend, Ren. Stay safe. And of course, I would like to thank everybody who's been supporting Dream Agritech. Sa mga webinars namin, I think we have already had 10 or 9, I've lost count. But we began this during the lockdown, and tuloy-tuloy lang ang pag-share ng knowledge through this medium. So, next week, we have another interesting topic. Tungkol naman ito sa post-harvest. So, pakiabangan yan. Hindi ko na muna ibibigay yung topic, basta tungkol siya sa post-harvest. And it's something that you can do at home. Ayan. So
Yeah.
that's an exciting topic for next week. So, pakiabangan yan. And on Wednesday, Jim, sinong guest natin sa Agri ka ba?
Okay, so very interesting po yung guest natin sa Wednesday. None other than the Agri-Attaché of the Philippines to the Rome-based agencies, or also known as the Deputy Permanent Representative to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Si Ambassador, hindi, si Sir Jojo Lazaro. Oh,
Jojo Lazaro.
yeah.
Yes. So, ayun ano. So, guys, don't forget to tune in Wednesday 7:30 p.m. Agri ka ba?
Philippine
And
time.
Philippine Standard Time. So, paki-catch na rin yung mga replays nung Agri 2020 and Agri ka ba on Facebook. So, ayun, remind ko lang kayo. Wait lang, flash natin. So, remind ko lang kayo to like and hit the live notification sa Dream Agritech and Dream Agri Media. And sa YouTube naman, Dream Agritech Services, click on the notification bell as well. So, in behalf of Dr. Aileen Lapitan, Jim Cano, my name is Dakila Alfindo. See you next week on Agri 2020, New Perspectives in Agriculture. Thank you. Ma'am Aileen, Jim, yung pala, please stay after we go off air. Ayun,
Okay.
yun lang. Okay. Thank you.